Have you heard of the Watson Glaser critical thinking test? In this video, we're going to talk about what it is, how to ace it, and where it might be used, normally for legal-related roles, but not exclusively. My name is Eloise. I'm a consultant here with the Profs. I specialise in law undergraduate admissions, so getting people into their university of their choice for law. I studied law myself at Cambridge and I practiced as a lawyer as well. And the Watson Glaser test in law traditionally was used by law firms to assess the suitability of an applicant for a training contract, or now in the SQE process for your qualifying work experience. The Watson Glaser test would have traditionally been used on things like open days or assessment centres when you're applying for a role as a future solicitor at a law firm to assess whether you might be suitable for that role or not. These days, the Watson Glaser test has become a little bit more prominent because law firms are using it for the degree apprenticeship pathway. Now, we have a whole video on that process if your pathway is to become a solicitor apprentice. But it's important to note that by taking the apprenticeship pathway, you would not be sitting the LNAT, which is the traditional test that's required for admissions to law. And again, we have a separate video on the LNAT, so please go and check that out as well. So the Watson Glaser test is a critical thinking test that was developed by educational psychologists Watson and Glaser, essentially, to examine some of these skills. And it can actually be used in a variety of different business contexts. So it's not restricted to law. It's really about testing fundamental skills like critical thinking, reasoning, deduction, assumptions, and interpretation across a wide variety of fields. Overall, you could say the fundamental skill at work here is critical thinking, and the Watson Glaser test is split into 5 main sections: deduction, evaluation of arguments, inference, interpretation, and recognition of assumptions. Let's go through each of those sections in turn. Let's start with deduction. In this section, you'll be given a number of facts followed by a number of statements, and your task is to determine whether you can draw those conclusions from the facts to the statements, whether that could be a logical determination. In the evaluation of arguments section, you will be given a number of arguments, and your task is to evaluate how strong or weak they are. In the inferences section, you are given a statement followed by several inferences, and your task is to determine whether those inferences are true, probably true, insufficient data, probably false, or false. In the interpretation section, you are given a passage and your task is to interpret it. And you're often given a number of conclusions, and your task is also to determine whether those conclusions are correct or not. And finally, in the recognitions of assumptions section, your task is to determine whether there are assumptions made within a particular piece of text and whether you can recognize those effectively or not. In terms of the format of the Watson Glaser test, there could be slight differences depending on the firms that are using them and the ways that their firms are using these tests. One of the techniques that you might want to carry over from LNAT preparations is process of elimination. This is often a really good technique to use when you have multiple choice questions because it makes you work through every single option and it ensures that you don't skip over any ones that could be right if you instinctively have a feeling for the answer. The length of the Watson Glaser test can vary, so typically it's either 30 minutes or an hour. There are sort of 2 different types of format, but again, it does vary depending on your firm and depending on the way in which they're using the test. It will normally be done online, although you can also end up sitting a Watson Glaser test if you go into a firm for an assessment day or an open day. In terms of scores, this is a little bit unlike the LNAT in the sense that there isn't just one score that is considered to be good because, again, there are different formats of this test and different durations and different ways that these are regarded by firms. Ultimately, the higher you score, of course, the more impressive it is. But again, similarly to the LNAT, you don't necessarily need to be getting 100% on these tests, but you do need to show like a really good level of understanding and consistency in performance of your answers. So how should you prepare for the Watson Glaser test if you're likely to have to sit this? I think there are 3 main categories of things that you can do. Number 1, and this is similar to the LNAT, one of the best things you can do, not just for these tests, not just for your law studies, but for your legal education as a whole, is read a lot and really good quality reading every single day if you can. So you'll see on the LNAT website that there are a list of resources that the LNAT recommends that you read. These are things like the Financial Times, the Economist, the Guardian, maybe the Times as well, opinion pieces, as well as pieces that look at for and against, as well as studies, as well as different types of materials so that you get very familiar with reading quite a lot of text in a short amount of time. Similarly to the LNAT, when you're reading, it is really important not just to read passively, but actually to read with the intention of preparing for the test. So for the LNAT, the provider recommends that you ask questions like, what are the main assumptions here? What's the main argument here? What are the for and against points? Same with the Watson Glaser test. If you're reading to prepare for that, you can ask yourself, what are the assumptions made in this test that it might be unfounded or not backed up by the evidence? What are the main arguments? What's the tone of this passage? Can I see the logical progression of the argument structure? Do I understand how this argument is put together? The second thing you can do is mock tests. And the great thing about the Watson Glaser test is that because so many people use it and because it's been around for so long, there are a lot of resources online. So you can not only find many examples of online tests, many of which are free. There are some subscription services as well, or paid services. So definitely try all of the free versions that you can before subscribing to anything. And there are also books on the Watson Glaser test, so you can get a book. Just be careful, again, similarly to the LNAT, that when you take the test, you are obviously taking it online. So if you're revising from a book, it's actually best to have the book on some kind of e-reader or like some kind of digital device so that you can get used to reading on a screen. If you are at school, so if you're applying directly for an apprenticeship, or even if you're at university and you're applying for a job, there will often be careers resources within the careers services or with the employability services, and often they will give you mock Watson Glaser tests, or they will be able to give you some resources for this. So it's definitely worth asking. And the final category of preparation I think you can do is time management. And again, similarly to the LNAT, a lot of this is just how well can you actually manage your time, how swiftly and efficiently can you read, but also taking in the information. So things like practicing mock tests, but also making sure that your timing is on point, not just for your Watson Glaser preparation, but really for any exams that you're taking. This is a fundamental part of achieving well in the test. In terms of your results, they will often be sent directly to the test provider and then on to the firm or whoever is assessing you. And then you might get your results at a later stage. They're not normally taking so long as the LNAT results. Some of you will know from the LNAT that you wait months to get your results back. It's not usually as long as that, but it does depend on when you sit the test and when the results are released to you. So will you definitely need to prepare for this test? The Watson Glaser test is a bit more confusing in terms of how much you should put into preparation, because often you actually don't know whether you're going to need to take this test or not. Whereas obviously with the LNAT for certain universities, you just know that you need to take the test at a certain time. My advice would be, if you're preparing for the LNAT, it's going to help with the Watson Glaser test as well. So those can kind of double up anyway. If you're not sure whether you will take the Watson Glaser test or not, it's definitely worth checking on the application pages of any particular law firm that you're applying to, whether that is for your future career as a solicitor, like qualified solicitor, or whether you're going the apprenticeship route. Definitely check on their application pages. They will normally say if you need to take the Watson Glaser test. Just be aware that they might call it something different. So sometimes firms will have their own version of this test that is kind of similar, but might just be called a critical thinking test or critical skills test. These will often use the same kind of skills as the Watson Glaser. So it's worth doing Watson Glaser preparation with a book or other resources if you know you're going to have to take a critical thinking test. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it, please do leave a like and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comment section below and we will try and get back to you as quickly as possible. If you have a friend who would benefit from this video, please do send it along to them. And if you would like any support or assistance during your application journey, please do get in touch using the information on screen now. We have a whole team of consultants here at the Profs who are extremely experienced in every single aspect of the admissions journey. And as always, best of luck with your applications.